Hello, I'm Patricia Van Skyke, Director of the Lloyd Library and Museum in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'd like to welcome you to today's program, A Legacy of Pawpaws with Ron Powell. The Lloyd Library has a long history of being home to pawpaws. You'll find one of the first public works on nature in the Americas, published in 1731 by Mark Catesby with a hand-colored botanical illustration of a pawpaw. Another book, published in 1760 by Philip Miller, the chief gardener at the Chelsea Physic Garden, features pawpaws. And you'll find information on growing pawpaws and even their medicinal benefits. Our presenter, Ron Powell, has contributed significantly to the body of knowledge on pawpaws. What started as a hobby more than 30 years ago has grown into a full-blown research project, as he has documented 500 pawpaw trees, making observations, taking copious notes, and photo documenting pawpaws. He has become one of the leading authorities on pawpaws. While Ron often keeps a low profile, whether he's sitting at the back of a lecture or quietly viewing one of our exhibitions, people seem to figure it out and seek out his knowledge and expertise. Ron holds a PhD in agriculture education from the Ohio State University and is founder of the North American Pawpaw Growers Association. He's taught university courses at nearby universities on entomology and botany. He and his late wife Terry have won more than 10 awards at the Ohio Pawpaw Festival, including Largest Pawpaw and Best Tasting Pawpaw. Please join me in offering a warm welcome to Ron Powell.
Nice to see everybody here tonight. Some new faces as well as some old friends. And this was probably the biggest challenge I think I've faced in a while, because I'm not going to be talking about pawpaws specifically. I'm not going to be talking about growing. I'm not going to be talking about pruning, fertilizing, pollination, or anything else. This is about a legacy. And if you look up the definition of legacy, it means something handed down. So we're going to go back and take a look at what my wife and I have accomplished over the last 25 years in growing pawpaws. Show you what we have done and what we've accomplished. I hope we've accomplished it. Pawpaws are more popular now than ever. They're hard to find, especially the young plants. So that's where I'm going to begin. So I'm going to begin my journey with the farm. Well, we did at the farm. The farm is, I'll show you where it is on a map. We're in Adams County, which is one of the 32 Appalachian counties in Ohio. Poor soil, rocky soil, no running water, lots of other things that we had to overcome. So we're going to be looking at those things, and I hope that it's a little bit different perspective than what you've seen before. And afterwards, I'll answer any of your questions that you have about pawpaws. The fossil records of pawpaws go back a ways. In New Jersey, they go back 15 million years. And in the Mississippi, they go back 45 to 55 million years. You can find plants of fossils of pawpaws. The earliest written record of pawpaws was in 1541 by a member of Hernando de Soto's expedition through southeastern United States. And this is a picture of the book she was mentioning, and I'm going to put it up here. Because if you type in pawpaw on the computer, on your browser, you're likely to pull up papaya. The common name of papaya is pawpaw. So that's the reason it pops up on the screen. This is James Little. James was a pawpaw grower in Indiana, and he wrote a little treatise on pawpaws in 1905. And the reason I have him here is because he was the first one to name a pawpaw, called Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom has been going for a long time, but anyway, he named the first pawpaw. Anyway, he said, as an article of food, I can think of no fruit that's more nourishing than pawpaw. During the season of ripening, I'll always eat heartily of this fruit and never experience any inconvenience. He's talking about stomach distress. How many of you have had an unripe pawpaw? Good. Brian has back there. It gives you a little bit of stomach distress. How about fruit leather? Anybody have pawpaw fruit leather? It'll give you stomach distress also because it turns rancid for some reason. In fact, it satisfies hunger when one is in need of food. And his final comment was, we can never realize what a great blessing the pawpaw was to the first settlers. While they were clearing the great natural forest or preparing to build cabins, planting fruit trees was rather an experiment for a number of years. The pawpaw and a few other wild fruits of less value were all their dependence so far as fruit is concerned. The pioneers survived, many of them survived on pawpaws during times of famine. So they were an important part of our history, but we're not doing that tonight, are we? Nope. In 1916, there was a contest sponsored by the American Genetic Association. They offered $100 for information about pawpaws. And the opening paragraph of the paper says, of all the important native fruits of the United States, the least known is probably the pawpaw, which grows in the forests from the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic west to Oklahoma and as far north as New York and Michigan. As far as this map's concerned, they were in the eastern states over here. They're not all the way across Texas. They were just found in eastern Texas. And with this contest, they took the top 7 pawpaws out of the, I think, 57 or so, or 75 that were entered. They took the top 7 that tasted the best. Ohio had 3 out of the top 7. And the best tasting was found by a Mrs. Ketter of Ironton, Ohio. She wrote, the pawpaws that you received from me were growing in dense thickets. And you know, the song says that they were in patches. All the references I can find in Ohio, including the river to the west, which was in Claremont County, they were talking about Lincoln Airport. They said Lincoln Airport at one time was a pawpaw thicket, not a patch, a thicket. And in this thicket, they had locust and mulberry and pawpaw trees. So she was the top winner. If you want to find out more about Mrs. Ketter, the book by Andy Moore, which is over here in the shelf, the cover's off of it, but it's a green book. And he has a whole chapter on looking for the pawpaw that Mrs. Ketter had sent, at least the remnants of the tree. But I'm not going to tell you the results. You'll have to look it up yourself. Right here is his book. The cover's not on that one, but I had a cover on mine. Anyway, the pawpaw patch. Some of you probably remember. Who made this song popular in the 40s? Emily, you're the only one that knows. Burl Ives made the song popular. And that brings me up to the mid-40s. Now I want to get to the mid-40s because very few orchards were established in the early 90s. James Little in Danville, Indiana had one in 1895. Other individuals include Buckman, Zimmerman, Hershey, which is in Pennsylvania, that's the chocolate candy guy, Hershey, and Blandy Experimental Farm. And take a note, the American Genetic Association identified 14 cultivars in 1917. That's all they had. By 1950, there were 17 additional ones. So pawpaws, cultivated pawpaws were very scarce at that time, where they had selected, and most of these had to be selected out of the wild because they were not doing any breeding at this time. Since 1950, collections were built by Corwin Davis, who's out of Michigan, Hickman, Thatcher, and Neil Peterson. And Neil Peterson is probably the best known around now because he introduced, I think, 7 or 8 cultivars because he planted out about 2,000 pawpaw trees and selected the best ones out of the collection. Now he traveled around and collected seeds out of the old orchards up here. It was the 1980s he did that. Now, I titled this section, Making the Most of What You Have, Growing Pawpaws on Marginal Land, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. In 1999, Terry and I, my wife, were invited to go down to Kentucky State University by a student of mine from the University of Cincinnati. And they had a 5-acre planting of trees. And I don't know whether you can see it or not, my wife is standing here munching on a pawpaw. I didn't notice that before. So she got all excited. She turned around to me and she said, Ron, I know now what I want to do with the farm. Because the farm was purchased, let's go back up. This is the orchard. This is a little cross they had between a Simina triloba and a Simina reticulata. The blossoms are 4 inches across, but it's not hardy enough here. It died out. Today, this is what the trees look like down at the University of Kentucky. Trees get old like we do. They quit growing, the branches die, the leaves get small, and they took out all those trees and they've been replanted this last couple years. Okay, 32 Appalachian counties, and we are located right up here. And my farm is right down here. I'm about a half a mile from the Ohio River, and I'm in zone 6B. So a little bit different than what we're used to. So what challenges did I have overcoming to farm? Well, we're 75 miles from home. It's very remote, rocky, and hilly. No deep, rich, well-drained soils, and you probably have read the textbooks say you've got to have deep, rich, well-drained soils for pawpaws. Not true entirely. We had no source of water, no source of electricity, land needed to be cleared, and there were no structures. So this is what the farm looked like, because it was for hunting. So we started clearing the trees, cut them down, had to cut them up and drag them off, and we only had Saturdays to do it. We mulched and chipped everything we could. Here's a pile of mulch so that we could mulch the trees as they were planted. We burned a lot of, incorrect. We made bio-charcoal out of these things. So try to utilize everything we could. And Terry did me the honor of letting me plant the very first tree. And after that, she said, "You're not good enough. I'm going to plant the rest." So you can tell by in the first 2 years, we got 15 trees planted because we were busy cutting the woods down. This is what the very first row and the field that I call the north field, and I'll show you in a minute the difference between the fields. This was in the north field. Trees are planted 8 foot apart, and this is what they look like in 2015. And we used 5-gallon buckets, and we started to use tree shelters. Tree shelters are those plastic tubes that you put around the plant to keep the deer off of it and so forth. But we found out that the buckets were far better. My wife found that the wasps liked the plastic tubes. She got stung a few times. And then we also had problems with snails. They got inside the tubes and were eating the leaves. So we went to buckets, and the buckets provided enough environmental improvement, kept the plants warmer. And the big thing was they kept off the turkeys. The turkeys found out that around the trees that we had dug the holes, the soil was nice, they could dig down and eat the grubs and things, insects out of the soil. So the buckets kept them away from the plant far enough that they didn't dig the plant out. They could scratch, but they couldn't dig the plant up. And we had lots of turkeys because we had them nesting in the field. So we had to control the turkeys. We had one major insect problem at the farm, and I could give you a lecture on insects because I've got probably 35, 40 different insects I found on the plants at the farm. But the worst one we had to deal with was the 17-year cicada. Need to understand, they do not feed. They feed in the ground for the 17 years on roots. They come out for one purpose, that is to mate and make a big loud noise during that process. The annual cicada is green and has green eyes, but the 17-year have red eyes and red wings. So my wife got the bright idea, let's put netting around the plants to keep the cicadas off. The female is the one that does the damage by laying eggs in the stems. So it worked fine. It kept them off the plants. But then we had a windstorm. And the wind knocked over most of the trees we had. Most of these trees that we had were from Neil Peterson, grafted trees from Neil Peterson. I think we drove to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, and bought about 39 of them and brought them back, and about half of them broke off. This is what the ones that look like that weren't under the netting. The following year, this is what the mature trees look like because these twigs are dead, and the female had laid her eggs in the stems. And I got a picture of, this is little slits where the female lays their eggs. This is a year later where the stem has partially healed, although it's still weak, and we had a lot of damage even after they healed. I did find out one thing, that trees that were grown in areas where they had annual cicadas survived better than the trees that were grown in an area that did not have annual cicadas every year. So there was some resistance going on there. But anyway, then we built a barn in '04 because Terry was tired of hauling the equipment back and forth to home because we didn't have any place up here to put the equipment. So we had a barn built, and this is what it looks like. And we had plenty of buckets, lots of buckets. So let me back up here. Yeah, let me go here. And we decided to put, I decided to put 5-gallon buckets under the drip line to catch the water because we don't have any running water up there. And geologically, I have about a 10% chance of hitting water if we drill a well. So we had to capture water some way. So we put out these buckets, and we get one row filled, and I put a lid on it, set another bucket up, and I did that about 3 times, 3 buckets high. The top layer, I didn't put a cover on. We had more of the little, what I call tree frogs, the little peepers, laid eggs in those top buckets. So for the next few years, we had lots of noise at night at the farm. I mean, you learn your lesson, and I finally put in 55-gallon drums, and we had them daisy chained together so I could collect water and didn't have to use the buckets. And in '05, we bought a tractor, and my wife is trying out the bucket, of course. Oh, there's the buckets I had, and there's the 55-gallon barrels I had that we ran water into. But then, you know, that gets small because once you start approaching a couple hundred plants, we needed more water. So we got a 1,500-gallon barrel. And I'm sorry about these lines. I took some out, but I didn't catch them all. They're not part of the slide, but I didn't catch them in time to get them out. So between these and the 275-gallon containers, I can capture about 7,000 gallons of water at the farm. And she just crawled out of the container because you can see the algae on top of it there. I don't know what they had on it before, but they had some weight on it and it caved in, and we had to pop it back out. So there's only one way to pop it back out. That was for one of us to crawl in. And since I have problems with claustrophobia, she got elected to go inside and push the top back out. And my daughter got into it. She wanted to make sure that the outhouse was camouflaged, so she took care of that for us. And this is the west field. The west field is about 3 acres in size. The other 2 fields are about a ½ acre in size. And we had to do the same thing here. We had to remove the trees, and as we went down the hill, we planted as fast as we could. So that's the reason you see a lot of debris in the field. A lot of biocharcoal going on here. I think one night we had 6 fires in the west field going. And we had to get rid of the wood because there was nowhere else for it to go except downhill, and that's where we wanted to go. So this is the west field. What's the date? 2009. This is what it looked like in 2009. And there's 7 rows in the west field, and they're each about 37 plants wide, and there's 9 foot between each plant. My wife did not like snakes in the barn. She never killed them, but she would move them outside. She would not sleep with a snake, besides me. Anyway, here she is resting. And these are shots of the east field. This is standing looking down at the barn, and this is standing up in the north field looking down at the barn. You can see the difference. And there's still trees standing. We hadn't cut out all the trees yet, but as long as they were in the row, it was easy to mow. If they were in the middle of the alleyway, it was difficult to mow. So, and in 2015, this is what the plants look like. Unfortunately, this is what they look like this year. We had a 2-month period of drought at the farm. We didn't have a bit of water. And then we got, I think, about 3.5 inches. Then it got dry about 2.5 weeks again. So we did not get a lot of fruit this year, but most of the fruit that I picked went either to Ohio State or Ohio University, which are still doing research. I collaborate with several nurseries, Kentucky State and also Missouri. So, okay, here we are. Now, this is a Google Earth from the satellite, and you can see the 5-gallon buckets from the satellite. This is the west field. This is the biggest field. This is the east field, and you can see the north field up there. So there's those 3 fields, if you want to know how they're oriented. And this row goes down to the barn. The barn sits right about it there. Now here's Terry planting, and she allowed me to dig holes, and a young student I had helped me dig holes. And notice that the rocks around each hole. And rocks are not short at the farm. This is what it looks like just by digging a couple of holes. We remove more rock from the holes than we do topsoil. So it's not a very conducive soil for the pawpaws to grow in. It's not that deep, loamy soil you think about. This is hard clay soil. Topsoil is at most 6 inches deep. So, but as you can see, they take off once you get them planted. It takes about 2 years to get them established. They do quite well. And then in '08, we bought Terry a gator so she could get around a little bit. But that's Terry and her sister-in-law in the gator. Beautiful sunsets. A picture of us in '08, and I don't know where the picture was taken at, but one of the conferences we attended. And here's Terry looking at the new growth. It does pretty well once they take off. And here's she looking at the flower buds in late spring. Terry loved to go and do demonstrations on cooking and use of the pawpaw. She loved it. This is, I'm pretty sure this is Gorman Farm. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's where this one was taken. And I don't care about the dates, I'm just telling you about the locations. This is the recipe she used. And it's a 5-course meal, and every course has pawpaws in it. So people loved that. This picture was taken at the Nature Center. We spent quite a few years at the Nature Center going over and giving talks and lectures and things. And here she is at home working with Dick Glazer, who at the time was one of the officers of the Ohio Pawpaw Growers Association. And here's Terry with her mom, and this is Hope Taft, Governor Taft's wife, and she was at the governor's mansion. And of course, if you're there, you got to look at the pawpaw tree. This is their pawpaw tree. We did a lot of traveling to visit different organizations and things, and this one was in Waynesville, Missouri. And they had a real nice Pawpaw Festival down there for a few years, and it died out. But anyway, a really nice little family, emphasis on family festival. And then this is a picture of a group of Terry and her fellow workers. Most of them are fellow workers and administrative assistants at General Electric. And they planted a pawpaw tree in memory of a lady that was, I was told, I had to make a phone call on this to be sure. She was the ambassador for the apes. And I guess they sent one of the large gorillas to another zoo, and she accompanied the gorilla because they had developed some type of bond. So they sent her with the gorilla to keep it down. But anyway, they wanted to make a memory for her and a plaque, and we planted pawpaw trees here for her down at the zoo in front of the gorilla exhibit. I don't know whether it's still there or not, but anyway, that's what we did. We spent quite a few years at the Pawpaw Festival. The biggest challenge we had was sampling. Once people found out that she had pawpaw samples, we named the fruit so they could know what they were eating. And here's Terry again. And we passed out flyers, brochures. Terry had come up with a ripening chart, and Ohio State used this in several research studies, and they said there's nothing wrong with it. It was right on target where it should be. So that was nice for her. Then I had developed, I don't know, 25 or 30 little handouts that we could hand out to people on different aspects. That one happens to be on hand pollination. Again, another picture of Terry at the festival. This is Terry at the festival. This is, she won the biggest fruit this year. I think that's about 1 pound, 2 ounces, something like that. And usually we competed with another gentleman from Indiana, and fortunately for us, he forgot his fruit at home. I did send him a sympathy card for that. He got a big laugh out of that. We was at the Paul Bunyan show for a number of years, and she wanted to make sure that Paul Bunyan had his pawpaw. So we did that. And this is me at the Paul Bunyan show. We always had a great crowd at the Paul Bunyan show. The only thing is all these people in the audience had small woodland plots, so they all had pawpaws. So all we could talk about was how to use them and how to sell them and market them and things like that, because they knew everything else about the pawpaws. But anyway, we had fun at the Paul Bunyan show. And of course, being an ag instructor, you're able to teach all age levels, all different sizes. This is a kindergarten class and elementary school. And the kids were great. I don't know whether the teacher threatened them or what, but anyway, they were well behaved. They were enthusiastic and curious. And if my memory serves me correct, only one little girl refused to taste the pawpaw. So, but we had fun that day. This one here is at Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble would invite nonprofits over every so often, and we could set up a display. It was at lunchtime, so the employees could come down and go through the exhibits during their lunchtime. So that's what this was. So here's our ripening chart. There's our cookbook. There's a spurtle. Everybody knows what a spurtle is, right? Good. And we had a sample of or at least an exhibit of a pawpaw wine bottle and hot sauce and some jam or jelly there and some other brochures and stuff that we had on display. And this was at Kentucky State University in '22. Loved working with young kids, teaching them how to graft. And this was at I want to say the Waldschmidt House. There was another name for it. The Civil War Museum over in Milford. Pardon me? It's Waldschmidt. They have a museum there. And these are homeschooled kids. They had it was American History Day, and they invited homeschool groups over. And Terry would usually bake cookies or something for them to taste. This is what it looked like in 2008, the farm, and another shot from the same area in 2015. So in 2015, the plants really looked nice. We had some good years. Pictures of us both. This is my cabin. We put up a cabin in 2011. And this is how my cabin was shipped to me. Fortunately, I didn't have to put it up. There was a couple of guys that come, and because I'm in Adams County, if it's not nailed down or bolted down, it's going to be gone. So the two guys that put the cabin up slept there at the site for 2 weeks. I know. So we had to run the basement. And the basement is extra thick concrete because we get winds up there. I've seen tornadoes come through. We put 10-inch walls up on the basement. Here's the cabin going up, and here it is almost under roof. And we also put a pond in at the time. This is what the inside of the cabin looks like. And this is what it pretty much looks like today. We got solar panels on the roof, so we have electricity. There's plumbing there, but we use rainwater. It's not drinkable, but we use it for everything else. Here's Terry sitting on one of our rock walls at the farm. And I did a lot of demonstrations on grafting. And this time I was up at Peru, Indiana. Does anybody know what Peru, Indiana has famous going for it? It's a winter home of a circus. So, and the reason I'm not doing anything is because the owner, Robert Johnson's wife, brought me out fresh strawberries and deviled eggs. So, couldn't resist that. So that's the reason I'm sitting there. But he's got a beautiful farm. It's level. It's in the Wabash River floodplain. So he has that deep, rich, loamy soil that the pawpaws love. And you know, if you want an ideal setting compared to mine, that's what you want to look for. This is one of the annual meetings, and we had an annual meeting every year that I was in the OPGA, and we took over the leadership in 2005. Terry, myself, and 3 other people. The guy that founded it wanted to give it up, and he wanted to just let it die, and we said no, we want to keep it going. So we picked it up, and I was president for the next 20 years, and kept me busy because we put out newsletters and e-news. This is a picture. I believe this was at Dick Glazer's house, if I'm not mistaken. This is one of our annual meetings. In the early days, we went to different places to have our annual meeting. This happens to be at Dick Glazer's house. We also went to Parkey's Farm and did presentations at Parkey's Farm at Winton Woods. Then in 2016, remember we talked about 1916, which was the American Genetic Society's contest. The 4th International Pawpaw Conference in 2016 had a contest also, and Terry happened to win the best pawpaw at that international conference. Here I'm again. This is at Dave Simpson's place in Jackson. We had our annual meeting there, and I'm always grafting. That was the big thing back then, because pawpaws, whether you know it or not, pawpaws cannot be vegetatively propagated from cuttings. They have to be grafted if you want different cultivars, either seedlings or grafted. So this is a reason why we're doing a lot of grafting. In 2018, there used to be a rock wall went right down about the middle of the road, and we had to destroy it when we put the drive in. And I found a drywall stonemason in Maysville, Kentucky, which is across the river from us. And he came over and he spent 2 years putting this wall in. It's about, I'll show you a picture here in a minute, about 200 feet long. And the interesting thing is, he only did 8 foot sections at a time. And that's how they're evaluated, how fast they can put up these 8-foot sections. So anyway, it took him 2 years to do about 200 and a few feet of wall, and it's beautiful. There's no cement in it, no mortar. The only thing he had was a 5-pound little sledgehammer. That's all he used. And Terry's standing beside a little 8-foot section he's working on. And what we did was we piled up these rock along the edge of the road and everything to get them. And I think he said he had 6 or 8 ton per 8 foot. So you can imagine how many rock we had. Again, a nice sunset at the farm. The fruit we got was very nice. And this discoloration is not a disease. Found out through some leaf testing and things that the manganese in the leaf is soluble. Those of you who know chemistry and elements. Manganese is soluble, so it was leaving the leaf and going to the fruit. And I tried to put magnesium on the trees, but I could never get enough on to keep the leaves from turning. So it didn't hurt the tree, and the trees didn't seem to mind it. So, but anyway, nice fruit. These are probably 12, 14-ounce fruit. My wife did not necessarily like the large fruit because she liked to eat one after supper, and half of that fruit was too much, so she liked them 8.5, 9-ounce size fruit, which some trees produce it. Here she is picking up fruit, and if you know anything about pawpaws, you can pick them up off the ground if they don't get too ripe, but then you need to feel around the tree to see if any of these others are starting to soften. It's kind of like a peach. Got to have a real soft touch to see if they're starting to ripen. If they're taken off the tree too early, they'll never ripen. So they have to be softening and starting to ripen on the tree in order for them to complete their cycle. So there were 3 of us that normally picked up fruit. And we would do it on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And I'd put them in the cooler in the basement. And then we'd load them in the truck on Saturday afternoon. And we'd haul them back to the farm, and I put a tarp over them to protect them during the night. And the next day, a gentleman from Indiana would come over and pick them up. And they were used to make beer with, is what they were going to. This was, they went to Upland Brewery. How many of you have heard of Upland Brewery before? Down in Bloomington, Indiana. I guess the students need beer to study with or something, but anyway. And it was hard to purchase. You couldn't purchase it because they were sold out usually before a batch was even made. So anyway, this is a display at the Nature Center. And this is Terry. I don't know why she's got that look on her face, but anyway. This is me at Long Branch Farm, which is part of the Nature Center. And again, you can see we're doing grafting. And there's all kinds of festivals going on. I looked on the website and I could find festivals in West Virginia, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Missouri, Ohio, North Carolina this year. So they're just springing up everywhere. And for years, Ohio Pawpaw Festival was the only festival taking place. These are some of the awards that Terry won during the years that she showed. And then she had two hobbies she loved. One was pawpaws, and the other was roses. This happens to be the year that she won the best, one of the best prizes, which is they call the King. There's 3 or 4 levels of prizes: the Queen, the King, and the Best of Show. So this is one of the top 3 prizes you can get on showing the roses. So. This is what the trees look like before the windstorm. Because of the drought, the fruit never got very large, never filled out, and most of the leaves had fallen by late August this year. So not a very good year. Then after the windstorm, all the fruit was going off the trees also. The other insect that's only Pawpaws is the only host for the caterpillar, which is the zebra swallowtail. And it happens to be on one of the milkweeds here, which is, they're feeding on it. They're not laying eggs or anything. There's no caterpillars on it. But Pittsburgh this year, for some reason, they've found the zebra swallowtail is coming back to Pittsburgh. So they're having a festival for the swallowtail in Pittsburgh. Instead of pawpaws, it's the swallowtail in Pittsburgh this year. So, and here's Terry standing by the gate. And she lost her battle to cancer in 2021. So, okay. I'm finished. I thank you for your attention. And I don't know the time, how long it took me, but anyway. I think we have time for some questions.
Yes, could you please tell us the origin and meaning of the pawpaw's generic name, cinnamon, please?
You know, I did not look at that, but I know the word pawpaw came from the papaya, because the pawpaw looks like papaya. So they first saw it and they named it. There's some feeling that it was an Indian name. There's some evidence of that if you look at all the different tribes we had around and the spelling of some of the names. And it looked like it could have come from an Indian tribe, but I don't think anybody really knows for sure. Even the common name is disputed at times. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I noticed that your orchards were on the top of the ridge, or on the ridge top.
Very top. I put a driveway down the top, then anything else is over the sides.
Did you select the top for any particular reasons? Was there no bottomland or?
Most of the topsoil had been washed away from the top.
Yeah.
And I had, yeah, it's a good question. I had 4 acres of bottomland, but it's about a quarter of a mile down the foot of the hill. And the road kept getting washed out. And then I did some checking, and the temperature down to the foot of the hill was about 10 degrees less than the top of the hill. So it was colder at the bottom of the hill than it was the top. So I decided to stay on top of the hill. So.
will your drought-stricken pawpaws come back next year?
A lot of them won't, and I'm in a process of renovating or rejuvenating the plants, and I don't want to dig holes and replant, so I found out when Brian here helped me this summer, we trimmed a lot of the trees back and we tagged the ones that looked like they were going to die, and I'll come in and I'll cut those stumps off about 15 inches from the ground, and they should root sucker. And no one asked this question before, but I'll explain it. Pawpaws in the wild, most of you know they don't fruit very well. They're not infertile, they're just self-unfruitful. I know, there's play on words here. But the female part of the flower matures before the male does. So male doesn't release, the anthers don't release the pollen until after the stigma has already dried up. So the flower is perfect. The flower has all the parts. That's the reason you need two plants. If you're going to plant, you need two if you want fruit. And should be two different ones, not the same ones. And you can take two seeds from a fruit and they'll be different. Genetically, they'll be different. All my plants, I didn't tell you this before, but all the plants you saw in the pictures were grafted by me. They were known cultivars and they were grafted. And at one time I had 125 different cultivars at the farm. And we had a total of about 500 plants.
You said the seeds are genetically different, so it's two seeds from the same fruit you can plant.
You can plant.
Different from the root.
Kind of like an apple, you know, you don't know what you're going to get from the seeds. That's the same thing with the pawpaws. Yes.
So what is your roofs? Oh, sorry.
Are there any local farmers markets that might sell pawpaws?
Yeah, I've heard that Northside has a guy that sells fruit. I think a market down in Marymount may have them.
Oxford, Ohio sells pawpaws
Oxford, Ohio.
on the Saturday farming.
And I know there's a dealer up in Yellow Springs that sells fruit. They're around, you just have to look for them. Because remember that, you know, with my fruit, I would usually have fruit from late July to middle of October. The trees flower a long period of time. They flower over a period of 4, 5, 6 months at time, or weeks at times. So if the flowers are getting pollinated over this length of time, they're going to mature over that same length of time. So just have to look around. If nothing else, call me. If I don't bring them over to Patricia, you can have some. I had plenty of pawpaws at home this year. I just didn't have any to farm because of the drought. So.
What do you graft them on?
Pawpaw rootstock. Usually they're seedlings.
So you take the big limbs from a big tree and put it onto the rootstock?
No, I don't take big limbs. Normally they're about, I like pencil diameter or smaller than my little finger. It's easier to graft. Originally when I first got into it, the plants were budded. Most of them were budded because you could bud smaller plants and they were easier to ship through the postal service. And they're budded down where the stem and the root meet, and it forms a little collar, so there's a little swelling there. And that's where they would take a single bud and graft it onto the plant. I don't graft that way. I use a whip and tongue. And
So how long does it take then once you graft them to plant them?
I usually wait a year to do it, but they mature in about half the time than a seedling would. Seedling will take sometimes 6, 7, 8 years. I've had fruit at home that I've grafted. Sometimes it'll bear fruit the first year. So a lot quicker, no more than 3 years in the ground. So it cuts the time in half.
Do you have to share fruit with critters?
How do you
You really know how to hurt a guy, don't you? You know, and no one asked why I put a fence post beside the plants. It's not only to hold the bucket, but the male deer don't like to get their antlers in that metal. So I don't have problems at the farm with deer rubbing the tree. I've never had any eat fruit. Now I've had some people complain about deer eating fruit. So I get if they get a taste for it, they'll continue. But I haven't had any at the farm develop a taste for my fruit. The raccoons, squirrels don't bother them that I know of. I've got enough nut trees around that they're busy on the nuts. The only other pest I have, and I haven't seen any coyotes eat my fruit, but the raccoons are usually the first ones in the field. You can tell when the fruit's starting to ripen because you'll start to see fruit being chewed by raccoons. Possums are not too bad, but now the raccoons, no one asked me why you don't eat the peel. The peel also has a bitter taste, and the raccoons will eat the fruit. They'll peel it and leave the peel on the ground and pile the seeds. If a raccoon won't eat the peel, I'm not going to eat the peel. How are we doing on time, Patricia?
You're good.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. We have, on the perimeter of our woods around our meadows, we have several, half a dozen clusters of pawpaws coming up.
Okay.
Each one forms a thicket from the suckers. So the first question is, how far should we thin the suckers out? And then the second question is, how close do each of the individual clusters have to be so they pollinate each other?
Usually, typically, they say 15 feet is about the maximum you want to put them apart. Now, my trees, 2 fields are 8 foot apart, and the big field, the west field, are 9 feet apart, with 15 foot between rows. Now, that's based on the equipment I have when I originally did the planning. So, you need to look at your equipment and how far apart you need to plant your trees, but I would say no more than 15 feet. I know that we did some work over at the Nature Center, and I think I tried to space them out about 6 foot apart. And
ours are obviously too far apart.
Too far apart, and you can correct that a little bit. You can put roadkill in there. One of the best pollinators is the green blow. I mean, I shouldn't say this to those of you that eat pawpaws, but the big green blowfly. They're one of the better pollinators, and also some beetles, nocturnal beetles, will pollinate the pawpaws. Or if you can find cottonseed meal, just take a small coffee can full and put 2 or 3 piles around. Don't spread it out. It's also a slow release fertilizer too. But it will attract the right type of blowfly to pollinate the flowers with. Or you can hand pollinate. That can be easily done also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Nature Center and Long Branch Farm. And Long Branch Farm is doing some, they're reestablishing trees out there.
Right, they are.
And are you involved with that?
I was involved with the pawpaws.
Okay. So there are pawpaws there.
Yeah, but they're not going to show you where they are.
No, I know.
Because you got to cross the creek. You got to wade across the creek to get to where the pawpaws are. Yeah. So I was just over to see Jason a couple of days ago and told him I'd be willing to help him out a little bit more. But I told him how to graft and how to thin the plants out. So we did a lot of work across the creek. So, yes. One in the back. I'll get you next.
This might be a dumb question, but I'll ask you anyway. So, is there any, if you're trying to preserve cultivars, is there, I guess I should put it this way. I've always had concern with multiple cultivars cross-pollinating and therefore that impacting the fruits. Does that impact the fruits or not?
It does not impact the fruit. It will impact the seeds and the seedlings, but you're not changing genetic material in the fruit itself. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah.
I was reading someplace the other day that people were concerned about all the cultivars we're developing. We're all crosses. And they were concerned that we were going too fast with the cultivars and too much of manipulation. But anyway, it happens in nature all the time. And all the original pawpaws we have that I could find and make a list of, they were all collected out of the wild. And we did not have very big fruit collecting out of the wild. I mean, the biggest you could find was probably the size of a tennis ball. And now I don't even grow anything smaller than a tennis ball. I throw it out. You know, it's just, times are changing. People want the bigger, the latest, the best fruit. But there's still some good ones out there that were found in the 50s and 60s. So, yeah, one is the mask.
If I wanted to grow some pawpaws in my yard, I got none now. I live here in Cincinnati. How do I start? Can you buy a tree, a sapling, and
some nurseries have trees. I know that Natorps has them occasionally. There may be some other large nurseries around Cincinnati. I don't know of any that have them, because I usually buy mine through a forestry service, like Kentucky Division of Forestry or Indiana Division of Forestry.
Yeah, there's one nursery at the end of Wooden Shoe Road in Winton Place.
Winton Place.
That's he grows native plants in general.
And he has pawpaws.
Yeah.
And potted.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. It's the only one I know of that's grown anything around Cincinnati. They're very scarce now. I mean, if you don't get your order in quickly, you're not going to get them.
And how much sun do they need?
Good question. You want fruit?
Well, that would be the idea, yeah.
I would say at least a half a day of sun.
Okay.
Now, you saw mine. Full orchard.
Yeah.
No shade.
A lot of sun.
They'll do good on the east side of trees, so they get the morning sun. They don't like the afternoon sun as much as the morning sun. They don't like the quality of the light. So, and if you're getting young plants, you may want to shade them the first couple years.
Thank you.
Why in nature are they always an understory?
That's just the way God created them. I don't know how else to answer
I
it.
didn't even know you could grow them in the sun.
Yeah, I know. I don't think a lot of people did until, I know we didn't until we went down to Kentucky State and we saw the 5-acre block they had in full sun. It's a challenge though to grow them in full sun, especially when they're small.
Because of the watering?
And shading. And the other thing is, remember, they've been around so long that they will reproduce themselves by suckering in the shade. So they don't need to produce fruit as an understory tree. That's the reason you find all these thickets, because all these root suckers coming up are identical to the parent plant. And most of the time in these thickets, you're not going to find a tree more than 5-6 inches in diameter, because the parent trees are going to die out. It's very rare to find a larger pawpaw tree. That's just the way they're made. That's, you know, it's the reason mine are dying, because so all my trees, you know, a lot of my trees now are bare. They're starting, the branches are starting to die. So I've got to either replant or do something to try to save as much as I can.
So about 25 years?
About 25 years would be about the maximum for pawpaw trees. I know that I saw an email the other day that they were complaining about the fact that they didn't want to grow, I don't know what tree they were talking about, one of the fruit trees, maybe it was peach trees. They said after 25 years it's going to die. Well, no one's told them yet the pawpaw tree is going to die after about 25 years either. So, yeah, I just sit back and chuckle. You know, they just don't believe me that the pawpaw trees are not they're not long lived. So.
Is there an, how do the pawpaws grow in a bucket if they've got a long taproot?
I've got trees at home right now in 2-gallon pots that are probably 7 years old, because I haven't done anything since my wife passed away in 21. So, okay. So, and 2 years before that, I didn't do anything either. I didn't do any planting. So some of those trees have been in those pots for about 7 years. You can force them. If you cut off that taproot long enough, often enough, they will produce a fibrous root system. I don't know if bought any plants from Forest Keeling. They've got pots that have holes in the bottom and they're setting up on a screen bench, and those roots grow through the bottom. They're air pruned. And the pots that I've seen that they've shipped up are just a mass of roots. There's no dominant taproot in those pots at all. So they can be forced to grow fibrous roots, but it's going to take you a while to get them there. But they can be done. But Forest Keeling is a good place to get plants, but they're expensive. They're not cheap, and shipping will cost you as much as the plant does. So that's the other problem we run into. But yeah, it's a good question. Yeah.
I just was going to mention another place that might have pawpaws that I just discovered recently is Quail Ridge specimen trees up near Oregonia, Ohio. So it's about an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, I know where Oregonia is, but I don't recall the nursery. I was a state nursery inspector for the first 7 years out of college, but I knew most of the nurserymen back then, but things have changed so much. That generation has passed away and moved on, so that's good to know.
Well, Ron, oh, we have one more question. What did you teach at UC?
I taught plant pathology and a botany class.
Did you like it?
The botany class I liked best because I could do my own thing, no limits. And so we looked at all the different foods that were being raised by plants, and a couple times during the semester, a quarter, we would ask everybody to bring in a sample of their food. That was really nice. It was a nice class.
Well, Ron, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to extend a special thanks to Ron and to all of you for joining us today. Programs like these are supported by members of the Lloyd Library. If you are a member, thank you. If you're not, we invite you to join, which you can do online, at our website, in person, or by mail. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.